Wayfarers by Algernon Blackwood. I missed the train at Evian, and, after infinite trouble, discovered a motor that would take me, ice axe and all, to Geneva. By hurrying, the connection might be just possible. I telegraphed to Haddon to meet me at the station, and lay back comfortably, dreaming of the precipices of Haute-Savoie. We made good time. The roads were excellent, traffic of the slightest, when crash! There was an instant's excruciating pain. The sun went out like a snuffed candle, and I fell into something as soft as a bed of flowers, and as yielding to my weight as warm water. It was very warm. There was a perfume of flowers. My eyes opened, focused vividly upon a detailed picture for a moment, then closed again. There was no context, at least none that I could recall, for the scene, though familiar as home, brought nothing that I definitely remembered. Broken away from any sequence, unattached to any past, unaware even of my own identity, I simply saw this picture as a camera snaps it off from the world, a scene apart, with meaning only for those who knew the context. The warm, soft thing I lay in was a bed, big, deep, comfortable, and the perfume came from flowers that stood beside it on a little table. It was in a stately, ancient chamber, with lofty ceiling and immense open fireplace of stone. Old-fashioned pictures, familiar portraits and engravings I knew intimately, hung upon the walls. The floor was bare, with dignified carved furniture of oak and mahogany, huge chairs, and massive cupboards. And there were latticed windows, set within deep embrasures of grey stone, where clambering roses patterned the sunshine that cast their moving shadows on the polished boards. With the perfume of the flowers, there mingled, too, that delicate, elusive odor of age, of wood, of musty tapestries in spacious halls and corridors, and of chambers long unopened to the sun and air. By the door that stood ajar far away at the end of the room, very far away it seemed, an old lady, wearing a little cap of silk embroidery, was whispering to a man of stern, uncompromising figure, who, as he listened, bent down to her with a grave and even solemn face. A wide stone corridor was just visible through the crack of the open door behind her. The picture flashed and vanished. The numerous details I took in because they were well known to me already. That I could not supply the context was merely a trick of the mind, the kind of trick that dreams play. Darkness swamped vision again. I sank back into the warm, soft, comfortable bed of delicious oblivion. There was not the slightest desire to know. Sleep and soft forgetfulness were all I craved. But a little later, or was it a very great deal later, when I opened my eyes again, there was a thin trail of memory. I remembered my name and age. I remembered vaguely, as though from some unpleasant dream, that I was on the way to meet a climbing friend in the Alps of Haute-Savoie, and that there was need to hurry and be very active. Something had gone wrong, it seemed. There had been a stupid, violent disaster, pain in it somewhere, an accident. Where were my belongings? Where, for instance, was my precious ice axe, tried old instrument on which my life and safety depended? A rush of jumbled questions poured across my mind. The effort to sort them out hurt atrociously. A figure stood beside my bed. It was the same old lady I had seen a moment ago. Or was it a month ago? Even last year, perhaps. And this time she was alone. Yet, though familiar to me as my own right hand, I could not for the life of me attract her name. Searching for it brought the pain again. Instead, I asked an easier question. It seemed the most important somehow, though a feeling of shame came with it, as though I knew I was talking nonsense. My ice axe, is it safe? It should have stood any ordinary strain. It's ash." My voice failed absurdly, caught away by a whisper halfway down my throat. What was I talking about? There was vile confusion somewhere. She smiled tenderly, sweetly, as she placed her small, cool hand upon my forehead. Her touch calmed me, as it always did, and the pain retreated a little. "All your things are safe?" she answered in a voice so soft beneath the distant ceiling it was like a bird's note singing in the sky. "And you are also safe. There is no danger now. The bullet has been taken out, and all is going well. Only you must be patient, and lie very still and rest." And then she added the morsel of delicious comfort she knew quite well I waited for. "Marion is near you all day long, and most of the night besides. She rarely leaves you. She is in and out all day." I stared, thirsting for more. Memory put certain pieces in their place again. I heard them click together as they joined, but they only tried to join. There were several pieces missing. They must have been lost in the disaster. The pattern was too ridiculous. I ought to telegraph. I began, seizing at a fragment that poked its end up, then plunged out of sight again before I could read more of it. The pieces fell apart. They would not hold together without these missing fragments. Anger flamed up in me. "They're badly made," I said, with a petulance I was secretly ashamed of. "You have chosen the wrong pieces. I'm not a child, to be treated—" A shock of heat tore through me, led by a point of iron, with blasting pain. "Sleep, my poor dear Felix, sleep," she murmured soothingly, while her tiny hand stroked my forehead, just in time to prevent that pointed, hot thing entering my heart. "Sleep again now, and a little later you shall tell me their names, and I will send on horseback quickly." "Telegraph," I tried to say, but the word went lost before I could pronounce it. It was a nonsense word, caught up from dreams. Thought fluttered and went out. "I will send," she whispered, "in the quickest way possible. You shall explain to Marion. Sleep first, a little longer. Promise me to lie quite still and sleep. When you wake again, she will come to you at once." She sat down gently on the edge of the enormous bed, so that I saw her outline against the window where the roses clambered to come in. She bent over me. Or was it a rose that bent in the wind across the stone embrasure? I saw her clear blue eyes. Or was it 2 raindrops upon a withered rose leaf that mirrored the summer sky? "Thank you," my voice murmured with intense relief, as everything sank away and the old-world garden seemed to enter by the latticed windows. For there was a power in her way that made obedience sweet, and her little hand, besides, cushioned the attack of that cruel iron point, so that I hardly felt its entrance. Before the fierce heat could reach me, darkness again put out the world. Then, after a prodigious interval, my eyes once more opened to the stately old-world chamber that I knew so well, and this time I found myself alone. In my brain was a stinging, splitting sensation, as though memory shook her pieces together with angry violence, pieces, moreover, made of clashing metal. A degrading nausea almost vanquished me. Against my feet was a heated metal body, too heavy for me to move, and bandages were tight round my neck and the back of my head. Dimly it came back to me that hands had been about me hours ago, soft, ministering hands that I loved. Their perfume lingered still. Faces and names fled in swift procession past me, yet without my making any attempt to bid them stay. I asked myself no questions. Effort of any sort was utterly beyond me. I lay and watched and waited, helpless and strangely weak. 1 or 2 things alone were clear. They came, too, without the effort to think them. There had been a disaster. They had carried me into the nearest house, and the mountain heights so keenly longed for were suddenly denied me. I was being cared for by kind people somewhere far from the world's high roots. They were familiar people, yet for the moment I had lost the name. But it was the bitterness of losing my holiday climbing that chiefly savaged me, so that strong desire returned upon itself unfulfilled. And knowing the danger of frustrated yearnings, and the curious states of mind they may engender, my tumbling brain registered a decision automatically. "Keep careful watch upon yourself," it whispered, for I saw the peaks that towered above the world, and felt the wind rise from the hidden valleys. The perfume of lonely ridges came to me, and I saw the snow against the blue-black sky. Yet I could not reach them. I lay, instead, broken and useless upon my back, in a soft, deep, comfortable bed, and I loathed the thought. A dull and evil fury rose within me. Where was Haddon? He would get me out of it, if anyone could. And where was my dear old trusted ice axe? Above all, who were these gentle old-world people who cared for me? And with this last thought came some fairy touch of sweetness, so delicious that I was conscious of sudden resignation, more, even of delight and joy. This joy and anger ran races for possession of my mind, and I knew not which to follow. Both seemed real, and both seemed true. The cruel confusion was an added torture. Two sets of places and people seemed to mingle. "Keep a careful watch upon yourself," repeated the automatic caution. Then, with returning blissful darkness, came another thing. A tiny point of wonder where light entered in. I thought of a woman. It was a vehement, commanding thought, and though at first it was very close and real, as much of today as Haddon and my precious ice axe, the next second it was leagues away in another world somewhere. Yet before the confusion twisted it all askew, I knew her. I remembered clearly even where she lived, that I knew her husband, too, had stayed with them in Scotland. Yes, in Scotland. Yet no word in this life had ever crossed my lips, for she was not free to come. Neither of us, with eyes or lips or gesture, had ever betrayed a hint to the other of our deeply hidden secret. And although for me she was the woman, my great yearning, long, long ago it was, in early youth, had been sternly put aside and buried with all the vigor nature gave me. Her husband was my friend as well. Only now the shock had somehow strained the prison bars, and the yearning escaped for a moment full-fledged, and vehement with passion long denied. The inhibition was destroyed. The knowledge swept deliciously upon me that we had the right to be together, because we always were together. I had the right to ask for her. My mind was certainly a mere field of confused, ungoverned images. No thinking was possible, for it hurt too vilely. But this one memory stood out with violence. I distinctly remembered that I called to her to come, and that she had the right to come, because my need was so peremptory. To the one most loved of all, this life had brought me, yet to whom I had never spoken, because she was in another's keeping. I called for help, and called, I verily believe, aloud. "Please come!" Then close upon its heels, the automatic warning again. "Keep close watch upon yourself." It was as though one great yearning had loosed the other that was even greater, and had set it free. Disappearing consciousness then followed the cry for an incalculable distance. Down into subterraneans within myself that were positively frightening, it plunged away. But the cry was real. The yearning appeal held authority in it, as of command. Love gave the right, supplied the power as well, for it seemed to me a tiny answer came, but from so far away that it was scarcely audible, and names were nowhere in it, either in answer or appeal. I am always here. I have never left you. The unconsciousness that followed was not complete, apparently. There was a memory of effort in it, of struggle, and, as it were, of searching. Someone was trying to get at me. I tossed in a troubled sea upon a piece of wreckage that another swimmer also fought to reach. Huge waves of transparent green now brought this figure nearer, now concealed it, but it came steadily on, holding out a rope. My exhaustion was too great for me to respond, yet this swimmer swept up nearer, brought by enormous rollers that threatened to engulf us both. The rope was for my safety too. I saw hands outstretched. In the deep water I saw the outline of the body, and once I even saw the face. But for a second merely. The wave that bore it crashed with a horrible roar that smothered us both, and swept me from my piece of wreckage. In the violent flood of water, the rope whipped against my feeble hands. I grasped it. A sense of divine security at once came over me, an intolerable sweetness of utter bliss and comfort. Then blackness and suffocation as of the grave. The white-hot point of iron struck me. It beat audibly against my heart. I heard the knocking. The pain brought me up to the surface, and the knocking of my dreams was in reality a knocking on the door. Someone was gently tapping. Such was the confusion of images in my pain-racked mind that I expected to see the old lady enter, bringing ropes and ice-axes, and followed by Haddon, my mountaineering friend. For I thought that I had fallen down a deep crevasse, and had waited hours for help in the cold, blue darkness of the ice. I was too weak to answer, and the knocking for that matter was not repeated. I did not even hear the opening of the door, so softly did she move into the room. I only knew that before I actually saw her, this wave of intolerable sweetness drenched me once again with bliss and peace and comfort. My pain retreated, and I closed my eyes, knowing I should feel that cool and soothing hand upon my forehead. The same minute I did feel it. There was a perfume of old gardens in the air. I opened my eyes to the look of gratitude I could not utter, and saw, close against me, not the old lady, but the young and lovely face my worship had long made familiar. With lips that smiled their yearning and eyes of brown that held tears of sympathy, she sat down beside me on the bed. The warmth and fragrance of her atmosphere enveloped me. I sank away into a garden where spring melts magically into summer. Her arms were round my neck. Her face dropped down, so that I felt her hair upon my cheek and eyes. And then, whispering my name twice over, she kissed me on the lips. "Marian," I murmured. "Hush! Mother sends you this," she answered softly. "You are to take it all. She made it with her own hands, but I bring it to you. You must be quite obedient, please." She tried to rise, but I held her against my breast. "Kiss me again, and I'll promise obedience always," I strove to say, but my voice refused so long a sentence, and anyhow her lips were on my own before I could have finished it. Slowly, very carefully, she disentangled herself, and my arms sank back upon the coverlet. I sighed in happiness. A moment longer she stood beside my bed, gazing down with love and deep anxiety into my face. "And when all is eaten, all, mind, all," she smiled, "you are to sleep until the doctor comes this afternoon. You are much better. Soon you shall get up. Only remember," shaking her finger with a sweet pretense of looking stern, "I shall exact complete obedience. You must yield your will utterly to mine. You are in my heart, and my heart must be kept very warm and happy." Her eyes were tender as her mother's, and I loved the authority and strength that were so real in her. I remembered how it was this strength that had sealed the contract her beauty first drew up for me to sign. She bent down once more to arrange my pillows. "What happened to the motor?" I asked hesitatingly, for my thoughts would not regulate themselves. The mind presented such incongruous fragments. "The what?" she asked, evidently puzzled. The word seemed strange to her. "What is that?" she repeated, anxiety in her eyes. I made an effort to tell her, but I could not. Explanation was suddenly impossible. The whole idea dived away out of sight. It utterly evaded me. I had again invented a word that was without meaning. I was talking nonsense. In its place, my dream came up. I tried to tell her how I dreamed of climbing dangerous heights with a stranger, and had spoken another language with him than my own. English, was it? At any rate, not my native French. "Darling," she whispered close into my ear, "the bad dreams will not come back. You are safe here, quite safe." She put her little hand like a flower on my forehead and drew it softly down the cheek. "Your wound is already healing. They took the bullet out 4 days ago. I have got it," she added with a touch of shy embarrassment, and kissed me tenderly upon my eyes. "How long have you been away from me?" I asked, feeling exhaustion coming back. "Never once for more than 10 minutes," was the reply. "I watched with you all night. Only this morning, while Mother took my place, I slept a little. But hush," she said, with dear authority again. "You are not to talk so much. You must eat what I have brought, then sleep again. You must rest and sleep. Goodbye, goodbye, my love. I shall come back in an hour, and I shall always be within reach of your dear voice." Her tall, slim figure, dressed in the gray I loved, crossed silently to the door. She gave me one more look. There was all the tenderness of passionate love in it, and then was gone. I followed instructions meekly, and when a delicious sleep stole over me soon afterwards, I had forgotten utterly the ugly dream that I was climbing dangerous heights with another man, forgotten as well everything else, except that it seemed so many days since my love had come to me, and that my bullet wound would, after all, be healed in time for our wedding on the day so long, so eagerly waited for. And when, several hours later, her mother came in with the doctor, his face less grave and solemn this time, the news that I might get up next day and lie a little in the garden did more to heal me than 1,000 bandages or twice that quantity of medical instructions. I watched them as they stood a moment by the open door. They went out very slowly together, speaking in whispers, but the only thing I caught was the mother's voice, talking brokenly of the great wars. Napoleon, the doctor was saying in a low, hushed tone, was in full retreat from Moscow, though the news had only just come through. They passed into the corridor then, and there was a sound of weeping as the old lady murmured something about her son and the cruelty of heaven. "Both will be taken from me," she was sobbing softly, while he stooped to comfort her. "One in marriage and the other in death." They closed the door then, and I heard no more.